Are we ready?
So in the interest of appropriate citation, many of the definitions in these pages come from the textbook, and the quotes come from the article.
Okay.
Did everybody get access to the article?
That's what you were going to ask too, right?
Yeah, well, I just want to make sure everybody has a copy of the handout and then maybe saw that article. Okay. Just forewarning, I'm a little hoarse. I feel like I'm catching a cold or something, but so sorry if my voice is raspy. So to begin, today Helen and I are going to elaborate further on social information processing theory, which we've been covering this week, the theory of the week. We're going to look at it in relation to Facebook, which is the article that was provided on Blackboard as kind of an application tool. To begin, social information processing theory was by Joseph Walther, as we know, and it's of the social psychological tradition, which just means that we have some kind of information inside of us, some kind of basis to go off from the inside that we project out, as opposed to socio-cultural, which says that we create our meanings externally. It's also an objective theory, as opposed to interpretive. Objective just means goal-oriented, has quantitative data to back it up, is studied, versus interpretive, which is a lot of opinion-based knowledge, or the process of analyzing and creating meanings, things like that. So Helen and I, before we begin, think it's important to look at several of the theories that kind of formed a basis for social information processing theory that kind of started before it. The first one being Goffman's impression management theory of 1960s. You guys can follow along with your handouts too, which most of you are. So Goffman's impression management theory says that that we influence people's perceptions based on the impression that we want them to have of us. So we're trying to control their perceptions of us. What's interesting about this is it's a socio-cultured theory instead of a social psychological theory, like social information processing is. So it's social cultured, meaning that all of this comes from creating a shared meaning externally, which we thought was kind of interesting as opposed. The second theory, Altman and Taylor's social penetration theory of 1973. It's a social psychological theory, just like social information processing. And it says that through interpersonal relationships or communication, our relationships will get deeper and deeper, starting at shallow and getting more intimate the more that we communicate, through self-disclosure mainly. It starts off really rapid and then slows the deeper you get into the relationship. This is something we talked about on Monday with the onion model that Dr. Taylor drew up here, the egg model in Monica's case.
I'm sorry.
So the next theory that applies to social information processing is Berger's uncertainty reduction theory, which was postulated in 1975. It's also a socio-psychological tradition, and basically what this theory states is that increases in information about what kind of a person you are provides expectations about our future interactions, how they will go, and then decreases uncertainty. So basically, your information, we gather information to form impressions about people, which decreases our uncertainty and then leads to a relationship development. In computer-mediated communication, we gather information in a different format as opposed to face-to-face communication, and that just means it takes longer to move from that social information gathering to relationship development. The next theory has to do with Aristotle's rhetoric, the rhetorical tradition, and it has to do with perceived source credibility, so warranting value and warranting information. Basically what that means is, how do we determine what information that we gather is credible? What do we believe? And so this particular article focuses quite a bit on source credibility. Social information processing was brought out as a theory in the early 1990s. At that time, there was no MySpace, no Facebook. Forums, emails, and chat rooms were the types of computer-mediated communication that was going on. So that was all text-based and had no pictures. People used verbal cues instead of non-verbal cues in computer-mediated communication in order to gather information and to form impressions. On one facet of computer-mediated communication has to do with selective self-presentation, an online positive portrayal which enables people to create overwhelmingly favorable impressions. So we all know about this when you were younger and people were just starting to get on the internet. Parents always say, you never know who that person is. That person who pretends to be a friend of yours could be some old scruffy pedophile dude just trying to get your address. So that's the taking selective self-presentation to its extreme. But selective self-presentation is done in all communication, in all impression format, whether it's face-to-face or computer-mediated. It's just that in face-to-face, we're able to see things that we aren't able to see in computers, and so it becomes more intense when it's just verbal text over, just text over a computer. And then we get into the warranting value, which is the reason to believe that information is accurate, typically because the target of the information cannot manipulate it. So I can tell you that I'm a 52-year-old fisherman, but if someone else says, yo, Helen, you're not, you're going to pay more attention to what they say necessarily than what I say. So if I can't alter the information that someone else gives you about me, you're going to assume that their information is more valid than what I might say about myself over a computer.
Next, we're going to look at the Brunswickian lens model. This was talked about in the article as a model that was created in 1956. So this is before Facebook, is before MySpace, is before email, is before chat rooms, before computers were really anything. So it was developed for a model for understanding visual perceptions of people and quickly, rapidly oriented towards interpersonal perceptions or judgments from people to people. It's basically how people make inferences about the character of others. So it involves using environmental cues to establish these judgments. So there's 3 things talked about on your handout: cue validity, cue utilization, and functional achievement. Cue validity is just basically what it says, is the cue valid. It's if you make the initial judgment and it seems to be reflective of the person. It's a valid cue. Second one, cue utilization. These all go based upon each other, build upon each other. So cue utilization just says that we're constantly observing a bunch of environmental cues about one another, but we don't choose to use them all when making our judgments. So which ones you choose is the cue utilization based off of its reflective. So cue validity plus cue utilization. The last one, functional achievement, is the third building stone, which basically says that once you make the valid cue and you utilize it, and they both go in hand to make the judgment back to the person, it's a functional achievement of the use of environmental cues. Okay. So a group of researchers used the Brunswickian model to do a study on personality judgments based on personal offices and bedrooms, and they used 4 mechanisms. The first mechanism was self-directed identity claims, which were claims directed at oneself for the benefit of oneself. So like talking about yourself to further improve what your thoughts are about yourself. Second one, other directed identity claims, were statements made to others about yourself. It's trying to direct others' impressions of yourself. The third mechanism, interior behavioral residue, physical traces of activity conducted in the immediate environment. So I was thinking like on a desk, the work that you have out that you're working on in an office, for instance, interior behavioral residue. Exterior behavioral residue is the 4th and final mechanism, and it's residue of behaviors outside the immediate environment. Excuse me. And things like pictures that are on a desk that give you ideas about things that go on outside their life. So if they have a camping picture of their family, you could make a judgment based on that mechanism per se that they like camping. Something like that. So the 4 previous elements and mechanisms aided in extending research to judgments via the internet and made a usable interface to take these judgments outside of interpersonal or face-to-face and onto the web, which leads us to the focus of the essay or the study on Facebook. So the title of the essay that we read was "The Role of Friends' Appearance and Behavior on Evaluations of Individuals on Facebook." are we known by the company we keep? So Facebook, I'm sure most all of you guys have one. If not, that's interesting because it's one of the most popular social media sites. It was launched in 2004, which is nearly 10 years after social information processing theory came out, which is really interesting because it's still applicable to Facebook 10 years later, as we kind of mentioned before. What Facebook involves is profile pictures in addition to text, information posted by the profile owner, as well as information posted by others that include their profile picture as well as the text that they leave, as you guys all know. And as Helen just talked about, with Facebook, information posted by others is considered more credible or more believable than the information posted by yourself because, as the story goes, everyone's so much cooler online when they have the ability to
Online,
make
nobody
their
knows you're a dog.
Yes.
So then we move into the context of the study, which was basically, how hot are your friends? Characteristics of other people who appear together with a target affect the perceived attractiveness of the target. And I would add the word physical, affect the perceived physical attractiveness of the target. So when you have, when they're doing comparative analyses like this, there are two different mechanisms that happen. One is contrast and one is assimilation. So under normal circumstances, when they provide, in studies, when they provide pictures of someone who is neutrally attractive, and then they provide pictures of people who are attractive and give no context whatsoever, the neutrally attractive person is rated as less attractive than the more attractive people. So that's a contrast. Assimilation is when they provide a picture of a neutrally attractive person and then pictures of attractive people and then tell you that there's an association between these people. They're friends, they hang out, they're on a team together. Then what happens is the neutrally attractive person's attractiveness level gets raised. So same pictures, two different groups, two different pieces of information, and there's a different response from people just based on pictures and the assumed association or non-association of the people. So in addition to physical attractiveness, this study also wanted to measure some other levels of attractiveness. Social attractiveness. That basically means, do I think I would like this person? Do I want to hang out with this person? Do I want to get to know this person more? That's social attractiveness. Task attractiveness. That question is, would I want this person on my team? Do I want to do a project for school or for work with this person? Do I think they're going to pull their weight? And then source credibility. Does this person seem believable? Would I trust what this person tells me? Are they a credible source? So those are some of the other questions that the study was asking. The first hypothesis was hot friends increase physical attractiveness and not hot friends decrease physical attractiveness. So that was the first hypothesis of the study. The second, paraphrased, obviously. The second hypothesis of the study is that your friend's hotness level will equal the same direction for the subject's physical and social attractiveness. So if your friends are more attractive, then your physical and social attractiveness rating will go up, you as the subject, not you individually as a subject. And if your friends aren't hot, then your hotness rating will decrease on physical and social attractiveness. So one of the questions that they asked was, does the effect of physical attractiveness of the friends' photos interact with the sex of the subject on task attractiveness and credibility? So is there a different response if the subject is a woman than if the subject is a man? That was one of the things they wanted to look into. Third hypothesis, friends' statements influence the evaluation of the subject's social attractiveness, task attractiveness, and credibility in ways consistent with the valence of the statement. So if they say good things about you and they're attractive, then does your attractiveness level go up in all of those categories? If they aren't attractive, then what happens? Does your attractiveness level go up or does it go down? And then the second research question was, do positive friend statement on a subject site raise the perceived hotness of the subject? So if people say good things about you, do others think that you're better looking? So all of this has to do with impression management, has to do with, are you credible, or are your friends more credible, and what type of impressions are people getting about you based on how your friends look and what they say about you.
Next, we're going to move on to the methodology of the study. If you guys read the article through the end, the methodology was where we first got hung up the most, because it starts to get really confusing with numbers and statistics and variations and models and stuff that felt a little bit over our heads at the time. So I'm going to try and break it down as simple as possible for how they conducted this study. The study began with university students that volunteered themselves to take this study. They were incentivized by credit, I believe, for different communications. There was 8 different stimuli, male and female, male versus female, physically attractive wall posters versus physically unattractive wall posters, so the people that posted were physically attractive or physically unattractive, and positively valued wall content versus negatively valued wall content. So Helen's going to demonstrate here how you get the 8 different possibilities. So you got attractive versus unattractive wall poster, positive versus negative wall messages, sex of the profile owner, and sex of the participant are the 4 different things, and there's 2 different options for each one, if you're following. So the how of the stimuli. Wall poster attractiveness. So how did these people decide that the people they were putting on these wall posters were attractive? When I first read it, I was thinking, this is completely subjective. These people would call these people attractive, where somebody else might not whatsoever. How they did it was they used a photo rating website where people had rated a number of photos.
Okay, how many of y'all have met one of these before?
0 to 10 photo rating websites.
This photo rating websites?
I haven't ever.
I'm not getting to it.
Never mind them.
Anyways, from the photo rating website, they took 2 attractive, and 2 neutrally rated photos for this portion of the stimuli. Message values. How did they figure out if a message was positive or a message was negative, necessarily? They did this through focus groups and pre-tests. They found out through these focus group and pre-tests that negative statements generally had to be morally dubious, whereas positive statements just had to show a person was socially desirable via Facebook. So one example that they used was a drinking example. If a person put on Facebook that they were drinking, it was generally considered positive. If a person put on Facebook that they were drinking frequently or a lot, it was still considered positive. But if a person put on Facebook, or there was a message on Facebook that said this person became ill because of drinking, got sick because of drinking, in other words, turned into a big hot mess, then it was considered negative at that point. Wall posts reflect the profile owner rather than the poster of the wall post, as we've talked about. How people actually went through about doing this study was they accessed a single www.web address that took them to Facebook profiles, where they conducted their research in a neutral environment, just like if we were Facebook creeping somebody. They just looked through the profile, gathered assumptions, things like that. Then, after they viewed the profile, there was a link to a questionnaire that they went to that provided, I believe, 15 questions that tracked task, social, and physical attractiveness, which Helen covered in detail, plus credibility as well. So with the results, we found out that there was a simulation. Subjects were rated more attractive when they had attractive friends and less attractive when they had less attractive friends. So it was incongruence with each other. Also, subjects were rated more socially attractive when they had attractive friends. So if their friends were more hot, then they were considered more socially attractive. People wanted to hang out with them. People wanted to do things with them. Attractiveness of friends did not influence task attractiveness or credibility, regardless of the subject's gender. Positive or negative comments had equivalent effects on social attractiveness, task attractiveness, and credibility. And lastly, positive comments increased the female subject's attractiveness, negative comments increased the male subject's attractiveness. which is interesting where the gender roles play into it, but it's that common stereotype that we constantly reference, where if a man is promiscuous or getting around, a lot of times it's like, nice dude, like high five. And then if a girl is, she's frowned upon, you know, she's put down, she's called names, things like that. It's the same general principle that they found out in these results, is that men with negative posts were considered more positively, women with negative quotes were considered more negatively. Oh, okay, and last part. What the results found out was that, judging by, if you guys remember the little charts and things, the numbers seemed really modest, really small when we looked at them. However, the reasoning they give is that it's surprising that they even got any results at all, really, because the amount of manipulated material versus the amount of neutral material that these people were looking at on these Facebook profiles was largely differentiated. So when they went to the profile, what they saw main and big in front of their faces was the neutral profile picture. That's a lot larger. The messages and the small profile pictures, which were the manipulated variables, were a lot smaller and a lot harder to decipher. So they actually didn't know if they would get any results at all. And when they found out that they had conclusive results, it was pretty impressive, really.
So what does this mean? When warranting social information available on Facebook, what your friends say and how they look will influence people's impression formation about you. I'm going to flip these around a little bit. Access to friends' comments helps to offset selective self-presentation. So no matter how you try to present yourself, friends' comments are going to impact that. Other statements limit your ability to control self-disclosure. And so one of the things that Tori and I had looked at was that this study would be really interesting to be re-evaluated based on Petronio's communication privacy management theory, which is a socio-cultural tradition which deals with privacy boundaries and whether or not you want certain information to be public, and the way that Facebook friends' comments can interfere with your privacy boundaries because of information they put out there that you might not want others to know. So weaknesses and questions unanswered. When this study was conducted, there were 19 million Facebook users, and now there are 1.23 billion Facebook users. So the use of Facebook is insane, and if you think about how conclusive the numbers were in the research on that small number, think about what the implication is on that with that exponentially larger number.
Okay, people now are just as likely to choose images instead of photos for their profile picture. How does that change the findings? So much of this study was based on seeing that picture of a person that was considered neutral. Now a lot of people use images that suggest belief systems, suggest values, suggest norms, suggest things that are going on in society, different things like that. And how would that affect the impression of the study from a non-neutral environment to something so, like opinionated?
Are you willing to monitor and remove Facebook friends' postings from your own page?
You'll monitor and remove Facebook friends.
And what would make you block someone? How do you feel about how others' comments will reflect on you now that you know what this study found?
Okay, and who owns Facebook comments? So if they're on your wall, do you own them? Does the person that wrote them own them? Or do you think Facebook owns them? And how does that affect?
Do we need to answer? Yeah.
You can talk about it later. We'll get to it.
And then what's next? What's the new technology? And how will this research impact your participation, not only in Facebook, but whatever comes next? Woo-hoo!
So we have an activity, and I believe we'll do the activity before we really get into discussion. But if you guys can keep in mind the questions we answered, and we can ask them again when we start discussion, that would be great.
Do y'all feel like this is an okay place to pause our record, stop our recording?
Yeah.
Oh,
And you feel like this is
yeah. How do you do
necessary
that?
Also for Jenny and Monica to
I don't think so.
How do you do that?
I don't think so.